Kia ora, no mai, welcome to The Elephant. I'm Miriam Kamo.
And I'm Mark Kreisel. There's an elephant in the room and we need to talk about it.
Right? And if I hit my own kid in the head 5 times, I go to jail. But if we let 2 kids collide over and over again and encourage them to do it, we call it sport.
So you're willing to put your son's brain health and your own brain health at risk?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I've had many concussions over my career.
And yet you still
That's right.
coach kids to do it.
That's right.
I personally feel no one should be boxing until they're 18 because it's sort of a straight line into CT.
Respectfully, I'd say that Chris hasn't been in our environment.
Yeah, but I'm the one who's
Good
dealing with boxers who are 50 years old and are now demented and are being monstrous to their children.
Yes, our show, The Elephant, is all about the tough stuff. We want to talk about the issues that get pushed to the edges, moving people into echo chambers and away from rational discussion.
In this episode, we're hitting a national nerve. Should we ban kids from under 14 from playing contact sport? Are these games that bring us together as a nation, or are they a form of endorsed child abuse while we cheer on from the sidelines?
Focus on banning contact sports for kids under 14 has ratcheted up since the tragic death of a 19-year-old this year during a Run It Straight challenge, a viral tackling game that's basically rugby without the rules, coaches, or common sense.
So this is what Run It Straight looks like.
Run it! Oh my God!
Brutal.
And this is what legitimate contact sports like boxing, UFC, ice hockey, rugby league, and rugby look like.
Oh, what a thumping tackle!
Looks just as brutal, right?
Yeah, I loved these games since I was a little tacker. I played them as a schoolboy. That's me there, just there. See, second from the left.
Aw.
But contact sports has a head problem, literally.
So what would you have said, brother, if you were told that you couldn't play contact sports? At that age?
At that age, I said, you're dreaming, man. I mean, I wanted to be an All Black. I still do. All I want is like
There's still
30
hope,
seconds. 30 seconds against Singapore at the end of the game. I don't even need to touch the ball.
You might not touch any players. So a larger study into this shows that international rugby players are 2.5 times more likely than the general population to develop neurological diseases like dementia or motor neurone disease.
But the Big Mac Daddy elephant is the link between repeated head knocks and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, which is a lot easier to say, Minnie. A lot easier to say.
Whatever you want to call it, there's no denying it's a serious brain disease, which neuroscientists say leads to symptoms like depression, suicidality, and eventually dementia.
So with this information, it's no surprise that many parents are reconsidering whether they should let their kids play contact sports at all, while their brains are still developing.
So here's the thing, CTE can only be diagnosed in death, but right now in the UK, there are more than 300 rugby players, many of them former internationals with early onset dementia and probable CTE.
Like our own ex-All Black Carl Heyman, diagnosed with dementia and probable CTE at just 40 years old. Imagine that.
Well, memory loss is quite a big one, and fatigue. Quite big from time to time, you know, like headaches that go from various levels. It's almost like most people put their cell phone on charge during the night. It's 100 at the start of the day, and I'd probably start at 55.
It's not just the king hit concussions either, but all the whacks that you collect playing footy over the years, which could be in the thousands.
New research out of Australia by neuroscientist Dr. Alan Pearce shows the earlier you start playing contact sports, the more likely you are to develop CTE.
And what we found was that changes in the brain activity were associated with the length of time they were playing rather than the number of concussions they may have had.
Dr. Chris Nowinski of the Concussion Legacy Foundation puts it starkly.
If your argument to me is that it's okay to hit kids in the head over and over again, you're never right.
We'll hear more from Chris soon, but first, what do our kids think?
Here's 16-year-old Matt, who's 20 days into a stand down after a concussion.
I woke up, didn't really know where I was, dizzy, nausea, headaches, didn't feel like eating, tried to go on devices, couldn't do that. Then tried to read a book, couldn't do that.
What does he think about the idea of banning contact sport for kids under 14?
Certainly boxing and sports like that have a higher probably head injury rate before the punching and straight contact to the head. But also rugby is pretty big on the head contacts, just knees, head-to-heads, elbows. All of that can injure just such a little kid. So I think 14 would be a good age to start.
So I don't know about you, Miri, but hearing Matt's take has really got me thinking.
Yeah.
What do you think the experts think?
Well, we can tell you. Here's the man himself, former All Blacks coach, Sir Graham Henry.
The young kid may want to play contact sport. You stop them playing contact sport, what are they going to do? Come on, be sensible.
And rugby leaders say they're doing precisely that.
But rugby has gone and researched and changed the rules, dropped the tackle height for kids, except, for example, and they are trying to make the game as safe as possible.
So New Zealand Rugby and New Zealand Rugby Foundation tell us the risk of concussion for teens is about 1 to 2% a year. That's around 1 concussion every 40 to 60 seasons of play. Mouth guards can track heavy knocks and how the brain recovers after impact.
But rugby isn't the only contact sport in the spotlight. Boxing's full contact too. Here in Aotearoa, nearly 4,000 young people are involved in amateur boxing, whether it's at the gym or through their local club.
So how do you balance risk, passion and safety when getting hit is part of the sport?
Joining us now is someone who knows that world inside out. World champion boxer Miyamoto and a mum with a 12-year-old son who plays rugby league.
Kia ora, Mia. The first thing that we've got to ask you about is the eye, the shiner.
It's a hell of a shiner.
The shiner's from Lani Daniels. We've been sparring each other and we're definitely rough. So we're in there punching each other. So it's definitely from her. That's the reason why I got a shiner.
It is massive. So tell us about when you get hit like that, do you ever think, gee, I might end up with a concussion?
No, I don't. That's never on my mind. I'm in there because that's the passion and it's my happy place.
Have you had a
my
concussion?
love. I don't know what you call a concussion, because I've never for concussion for me is like when you're knocked out on the ground and you don't remember what happened. So in boxing, I don't think I've never had one. If I was so fixated and worried about that, then I'd be stressed about my actual sport. Then I wouldn't be enjoying it and I wouldn't be passionate about what I love and do.
So your son plays rugby league?
Yes.
What do you think about the idea of banning contact sports for under 14s?
Oh, I think it's bloody wrong.
Why?
Completely wrong.
Why?
Because you're taking something that our kids really enjoy, Why are we allowing other people to judge that for them when they should be old enough to make their own decisions? And kids...
At under 14?
Yeah, they're old enough. Like, I remember being 13 fighting. That's when I was doing amateur boxing. And my mum was like, oh, I don't want her to fight. But I was like, but I enjoy it and I want to do it. And my mum was worried about the concussions and getting knocks to the head. But I was just like, no, but this is what I want to do. This is what I like doing.
So to Tanikai,
Yes.
what does he get out of the game?
My son, he was a complete gentle softie. He struggled with his mental health. It was very tough. And he didn't like hurting anyone. So people would always bully him. And because of the violence he had seen with me, he refused to hurt women as well.
We should quickly just let the audience know that Mia has a well-documented history of suffering from domestic abuse and has bravely spoken about it publicly to help others learn from
Incredible
that story.
story.
Yeah.
Really
so
is.
he saw that and he did
he
not
saw
want to have
that.
anything to do with violence.
No. And he didn't like hurting anyone. So
Well, how's he feel about doing that on the field, though?
he struggled at start, but it definitely made him stronger. And it made him bring out his confidence. He just struggled to make friends. He struggled to, it's quite
I can see it's really
emotional.
moving.
Yeah,
with
because
it. Yeah.
if you watch what my son went through and had to endure. So I put him in league. My family, we wanted him to do something for himself and he gave it a go and he fell in love with league. And this year,
What's it done for him? What's it done?
it's built confidence for my son. He's made friends. He's so more confident. He's so vibrant. This is his first year of league. He just started this year and he loves it.
So what do you say to the science where it says that the kids' brains are still developing at this age and any knocks they're taking long-term could lead to things like CTE or serious brain damage? What do you say to those scientists?
I say to the scientists, you should be focusing on the mental health. Why are we so fixated on physical?
But what if this makes the mental health worse in the long run when they're older?
I believe that it only makes them stronger.
Well, there are scientists that say this is a form of child abuse by putting them into contact sport because you're allowing your child to be hit in the head over and over and over again.
Now, if we're going to do that, then you might as well say, where's the life in sports? You're taking that away. You know, you're taking away our children's hope. It's the risk that we choose to make, and it's our kids' lives. And like, what do you want? Would you want a happy child or a depressed child? You know, you can't really weigh it out because no matter what, if you're going to take that sport away, and like, yes, I know you want to protect our child, but don't you want to give your child the best life that they want for themselves? I want to teach my children to make their decisions, and I want them to learn their decisions. And yes, they're going to have knocks to their heads. That's part of sports. And yes, at such a young age, it is tough. Like, trust me, because even 13, me taking punches to the head, it was tough. But I enjoyed it. And it made me stronger. It made me resilient. It made me the person I am today.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of debate around this at the moment, you know, the safety and the head knocks and everything like that, and people pulling their kids out of playing contact sports. Do you ever feel judged as someone who's letting their kids play contact sport?
No, because that's a them problem. What matters to me is what my child feels and what they think. If they feel like they're in danger or they're unsafe, then I'll support them and I'll encourage them and I'll be there to hold their hand. But if they want to give it a go, then I'll support them right there as well. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I want to teach my children how to stand on their own 2 feet. My son is 12, but he's building his own foundation. And if I was to die tomorrow, I know my son is strong enough to handle life. And that's through the sport.
From the lessons he's learned playing the games.
The lessons he's learned playing the games.
So you're willing to put your son's brain health and your own brain health at risk for the benefits that you've just talked about?
Yes, 100%.
Ngā mihi nui e te wahine tō mō o whakaaro nui I tēnei ata. It's just so wonderful to have you in studio with us and to listen, as always, to your inspiring self. Ngā mihi.
So can kids play contact sports safely, or is it time to get their heads literally out of the game?
Yeah, well, we approached New Zealand Rugby multiple times to be part of this important conversation, to front up and talk about this elephant in the room.
But they declined. They're actually the chicken outside this room, too hesitant to face this head on despite saying they're committed to reducing injuries across all levels of the game. They did, however, send us a statement. Junior rugby under 13 has a low-risk profile. In fact, ACC data shows that a child would need to play an average of 750 games to sustain a concussion. Most injuries in this age group are minor soft tissue injuries, the kind seen across most youth sports and physical play.
New Zealand Rugby are committed to minimising the risk of injuries at all levels of rugby. We also understand that some parents prefer non-contact options for their kids, which is why we offer formats like Ripper Rugby and the new T1, which are fun, fast versions of the game without the contact.
So with that in mind, and to discuss this important topic in more detail, we're joined by Chris Nowinski, the head of the Concussion Legacy Foundation, who's coming to us from Florida.
Nice to see you, Chris. And in the studio, David Graham of the Champions Initiative, who runs a series of boxing gyms across Aotearoa for at-risk youth, and Reverend Onasai Ova'a, Papa Toi Toi coach for men's premier and under-9 tackle, former New Zealand Sevens representative, winning gold at the 2006 Commonwealth Games. And we need to make clear as well that the Reverend is not representing New Zealand Rugby here.
Kia ora, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Chris, New Zealand Rugby, a no-show. What do you think of that?
New Zealand Rugby has some problems when it comes to understanding and acknowledging the fact that rugby can cause a degenerative brain disease called CT that has now been found in New Zealand rugby players. So I think I'm continue to be disappointed by their leadership in not being honest with the New Zealand and rugby world.
So what is the rationale for banning it for under 14-year-olds?
Well, the rationale, and it's not just focused at rugby, but the rationale, we have a campaign called Stop Hitting Kids in the Head. And basically the idea is that we have now learned that pediatric concussion can cause long-term problems, but really the other new problem that we've never talked about or addressed is the fact that cumulative head impacts, repetitive head impacts over and over again, over time will eventually cause CT if you hit someone in the head enough. And if that is the case, and we want people to still play these sports, we want to minimize their exposure to head impacts. You can't do that on the back end. Once you're good, you keep playing. So we start later and we protect the developing brain when children don't understand the risks of getting a pediatric brain disease. And the benefits are not the same. We should have a version of each sport that just doesn't involve hundreds of head impacts per year.
So you've even gone so far as to, in the past, call it child abuse, Chris.
I have. I do understand why people want their kids playing sports. I want my kids playing sports. My 4-year-old's running around behind the camera, and I want him to enjoy sports. But if you just take it as the idea that hitting kids in the head is wrong, right? And if I hit my own kid in the head 5 times, I go to jail. But if we let 2 kids collide over and over again and encourage them to do it, the same bad things happen to their brain, but we call it sport. And that doesn't make sense. So I'm trying to reframe the argument. To say, and I'm saying any coach who encourages this or parents as a child abuser, but I want them to think of the fact that if they won't hit their own kid in the head, why let somebody else hit their kid in the head? The damage is the same.
What do you think of that, Ref?
Yeah, I was just pretty interested to hear from you, Chris, just in regards to, the under 14 level. I think New Zealand rugby at the moment, the progression that the kids are making, from under 8s where they start tackle right through to, premier grade, it's quite a steady process. It's a good process for them to learn those core skills. So to delay that, I guess, to under 14, what's your process from under 14s into playing premier rugby?
I hear you. Yes, you do need to teach progression into the contact parts of the game, but you don't need 6 years to do it, right? People can basically learn over time. And as the brain develops and kids mature, they actually, as you know, get more coordinated and better at doing those movements. And so it's actually, like in theory, it's much safer to train later.
David, you run boxing gyms where the aim of boxing is to punch someone in the head. What do you think? Should contact sport be banned for under 14-year-olds?
We've been saying for about 10 years now, recommending to our academies that they don't have, as it would happen, those under 14 competing in the boxing space. The reason for that is the things that Chris is talking about, which he's got far more knowledge on. But for us to teach those skills that are required to see a punch coming at you at speed, there's a lot of skill there. And so it's not like, running in athletics. This takes time to build up, develop competency, confidence, and then to be able to protect yourself. And so we're quite happy to slow that process down, engage with our young people from 9 to 13, 14, and then to see them start competing from that point.
So after 14, they start hitting each other in the head, yeah?
After 14, there will be a lot more contact.
You're dealing with at-risk youth, kids that have been in lots of trouble with the police, that sort of thing. What difference is it making to their lives, getting involved in this sport?
One of the real joys of my job is I get to walk into some pretty rough environments, including places like youth justice facilities. And when you walk in there and you've got these often young men, you get about 3 seconds for them to find out if they want you involved and in their space or not. I need to have a vehicle that they are attracted to, use that as a way to build bridges, and then journey with them throughout those next 10 years, hopefully.
I personally feel no one should be boxed until they're 18 because it's sort of a straight line into CT, which used to be called punch drunk because it was so prevalent among boxers. And so because that relationship is so clear.
Chris, I'll jump in there. So punch drunk refers to professional boxers in particular. We look at some of these old fighters. In our organisation, we do not use the word fight or fighters or fighting. We have boxers, athletes, competition. And you're competing over 3 3-minute rounds. You've got a doctor at ringside. You've got a referee in there. You've got 2 coaches. Amateur boxing, we believe there's enough safety there to make sure
I know
athletes
you
can
believe
last the
that.
distance.
Do they strike each other in the head?
If you make a mistake, then yeah, you get contacted. But that's like anything. There's risk. Surely there's risk involved.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're trying to minimize it. The reality is the competition is not always the place you're getting the most punches, right? A lot of people spar and train, and that's where the risk comes from. You think about CT risk is just number and strength of head impacts. So if kids are training multiple days a week and their head strikes, you're still on that path of CT, whether they're professional and getting paid or whether it's amateur.
David, how worried are you about CTE with your boxers?
I mean, you were a boxer yourself.
Yeah, spent 10 years boxing, boxed to a national level, had 35 odd bouts, was all right in there. I had a coach that my father, who worked with me from a very young age, wouldn't have me boxing. I had my first bout just before my 14th birthday, so I'm a little bit shy of this standard. I never had a bleeding nose. I had to confess to Mark earlier that I did receive a black eye at one point.
Did you get concussion?
No, I never, given that concussion wasn't spoken about as much as it is now, and I think it's a fantastic...
So you might have got concussion, but you didn't realise?
Well, I never had any of the symptoms that would have said you've received a concussion.
So, Chris, would you say that if you've been hit in the head since you were 13 years old, you would have had some concussive impact?
Concussions are not actually what's leading to CTE. Concussions are a traumatic brain injury, but they're actually not even the hardest hits we usually take. So if you're getting punched full blown in the head, whether or not you feel symptoms, you're probably having what we call subclinical traumatic brain injuries, microscopic brain damage. You cannot feel one neuron die. You have 100 billion of them, and you cannot feel them. So if you haven't had concussion symptoms, that does not protect you from CT if you've been exposed to repetitive head impacts. I greatly admire what David is trying to accomplish to help kids in difficult situations who might have histories of behavioral problems. The problem is the neuroscientist of the solution being boxing is that if you take somebody who already has shown problems with behavior and you start layering on brain injuries or frontal lobe trauma that can be CTE, onto that, you should expect worse outcomes. And
I'd say there's a decent amount of nuance required in here, to be able to understand, there's several thousand young people working in our academies across the country. About 6% of those will go on to compete. Very few of those will ever receive a full-blown, punch to the head. However, do we wrap safety nets around things and therefore try to mitigate, or do we pretend it's not going on and then just, hey, shut your eyes to it and hope it goes away?
Rev, you're looking after kids around under the age of 9. What goes through your mind when they get head knocks playing the game?
Yeah, well, health and safety is the key measure for me, and something that's kind of struck a nerve with me was just your comment, Dave, around the development of skill set. And Chris, you mentioned that you can fast track that when they get to 14, and I think the issue here is whether that age should be lifted from under 8s to under 14s. But I'm not sure if you've done the research in New Zealand around rugby, Chris, but like I've seen it firsthand where I've coached under 14 team who have never played rugby before, but they've been given the green light to go for it. And the amount of injuries that they've taken, just because they're unavailable to do those common core skills, like how to fall properly, so they get pushed into it straight away. And for whatever reason, they're unable to be fast-tracked into learning those core skills straight away.
Rev, did you have any concussions?
Yeah, I've had many concussions over my career, and I've been playing now for 35 years. I'm 40 years old. I know I look 50, but and I'm still playing.
But how many of those sort of subconcussive blows do you think you took as well?
Oh, over a season, I probably took a couple each season of those.
And so, do you know people who've had to give up the game?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because of head knock?
Absolutely. I know a couple of my friends who've had only 1 or 2 concussions and they've had to stop their career.
And yet you still
That's right.
coach kids to do it.
That's right, yeah. Because like Dave was saying, it's the risk and kind of mitigating those risks around kids. I'm still playing. I've got 4 sons. And I know that before any rugby game, there is that risk. I could take a blow to the head, but I think I'm prepared enough now to put myself into a position where I'm not going to get to that. It could happen. I'm playing in the weekend. We'll find out.
So you're not worried about your children ending up with, say, CTE?
No, not at all, because like we're talking about, it's mitigating those risks, and developing the skill set. That's the skill set. That's the main thing for our kids. And from from under 8s, that progression up to under 13s, where they it's full rugby, full contact, 15 side, that you've taken those precautionary elements in their life to be safe on the field.
As Rev is saying in rugby, what does a gold standard development pathway look like up to 14? Now, I was thinking about that word risk. And if you said 500 years ago, there's going to be these things called cars, and they're going to kill like hundreds of thousands of people every year. And guess what? Everyone's going to keep on driving them. You'd go, well, that's absurd. But we've said, well, there's a risk and there's a purpose behind it. So, okay, we are going to be using cars. Well, the fact is that we are going to continue playing these contact sports. And when we shut one down, we're going to see these backyard brawls that we've seen crop up, the run it straight bits and pieces. It seems to be, and correct me, Chris, it seems to be kind of built into humanity that we like this physicality. Okay, do we take that as a given? And I think you've got your head in the sand if you don't. So we take that as a given. We like risk, we like contact. How do we mitigate so we can do it over a lifetime?
I mean, the question of safe enough is really a cultural question, not a medical question. Right. So I look at this as from a cultural question, do we want to be a society that gives children a brain disease? And I think the answer is we shouldn't. And I think we've shown enough science that we know that CT is absolutely correlated in football, ice hockey, rugby, soccer, that dose response, number and strength of head blows is going to predict who gets CTE. And so we want to minimize that. The idea of 14 for us, there's a lot of reasons involving neuroscience, specifically the fact that your brain is actually not protected against brain injury very well.
So 14 is the magic age, Chris?
It's a very reasonable age. I don't care if it's 12, I don't care if it's 16. It's just like driving. It's different in every country. In the US, it's different in every state. What age? Because you just look at the science, you have to make a choice. And I think the risk reward says that we have to move these minimum ages higher because the risk is huge.
So, Chris, some people say that you're pushing an agenda that it's based on fear, more on fear than it is on science. What's your response to that?
We've been talking about stopping getting kids mad for a decade now, and that's because we were picking up early signals of some very bad things. And what I think is interesting is that we have been right all along the way that this problem is much, much bigger than anyone wants to accept. The studies that'll come out over the next year will blow your mind about what we're finding in America. New Zealand, we just got those first few CT cases. We started the brain bank there right before COVID in 2019, and there were very few brains donated during COVID, and now it's exploded. And what you will find is that they are finding a lot of CTE. So people should fear CTE, and it's because we've been looking at it for 20 years, and I'm telling you, it's ugly. And it is getting more and more science-based, but the message is the same. We have to look at the risk and the reward. And we can talk about CTE, and that is sad, but we should start calling it pediatric acquired CTE, because in a lot of cases, people are getting it before they're even old enough to understand it.
Dealing with young people at risk and isolation around this one piece, that's, I think, where the problem is. Chris was talking earlier around how, a young person that's come from a difficult background, so they're already disadvantaged, and then having all these head knocks, it's just not how it works. I work on the front line, and that's just not the reality. The reality is that I've had, young men, come into the academy for stealing cars, and they're not in that environment anymore, because instead of getting the buzz out of popping a car and running it through a window, they've become a part of this community that cares for them, that loves them, that has got coaches that are skilled and have their best interests at heart. And the hook that we use is the boxing, is the contact sport. And so when we're talking about...
Chris is saying that you disadvantage them more. Disadvantaged kids become more disadvantaged.
Yeah. Well, respectfully, I'd say that Chris hasn't been in our environment. We've spent a great many years developing this platform. We've developed these things called, funny enough, development events. And so a development event, you have a number of development bouts between one young person and another. There's no winner or loser. They are straight shots only, which mitigates that turning, the rotational force, which is what Chris is referring to. There's a ref in there, doctors, they've got these big gloves on, they're looked after. and they're using the skills that they've been taught across all these years.
Chris?
The doctor's not there to protect against CT. The doctor's there just in case they get hit so hard they get a brain injury and die.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the boxing room, Chris, and I know that when you've got good doctors and good referees and good coaches.
Yeah, but I'm the one who's dealing with boxers who are 50 years old and are now demented and are being monstrous to their children. Like, so you see them when they're young and they're still healthy, and that's fine.
I did a quick look up on the dementia stats across the world, and Cuba is one of the highest performing boxing nations. This is not my world, but a quick scan. Cuba, one of the top boxing nations, has been for years, and their dementia stats were nothing really to speak of.
There's 1,000 good reasons why that might be. It's not because of the boxing. That you shouldn't bring
and vice versa. The same thing both ways.
I'm sure you've saved a lot of kids from a lot of trouble. Like, it is absolutely true. Like, I respect you for doing that. But I would say, just stepping back from our world, if you could do that in a way that didn't involve them getting brain injuries, it'd be better. It just would. There cannot be a world in which boxing is the only way to support disadvantaged kids and get them off the street.
But how can that happen? Does that mean you get rid of all these contact sports? Chris,
jungle gyms, roly-polies.
I mean, I remember I played rugby as a kid. If I wasn't allowed to play rugby, I would have had to find an outlet for that aggression somewhere else.
I mean, yeah, like children do not hurt themselves. Even kids, when they wrestle, they just play backyard football in America. There is no way they get to, like, in youth American football, they'll take 500 hits to the head, 800 hits head in a season. That's been recorded. There is just no way in child-directed play they're taking 800 blows over 10 Gs over 4 months. That just is not going to happen. They don't do that to themselves.
That's a world without contact sports. If we want to protect these brains going into older age, I mean, why not just ban them all?
It's not a question of banning. I mean, I think it is, again, like, you could go really extreme and say that you can't have repetitive hits until 18. I don't think that's the case. But I do think we just have to have a reasonable discussion around a minimum age at which they start doing something that's very risky.
Thanks for that, Chris. We're going to start wrapping up, but I just want to get to our guys here in the studio and start with you, Rev. I mean, has anything that Chris has said changed your mind?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate your time, Chris. And I'll be looking at the science. I know that my wife is pretty keen on the science as well.
Oh, she doesn't.
Having a husband, she's worried, yeah, because husband, 4 boys playing those contact sports.
Does she want them to stop?
No. I think for one thing that Dave said, it's just the environment. Chris, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised if you came. More than welcome to come up to Papatoetoe in South Auckland and to have a look at kind of that development process in which we take as a coach. And I've coached him from under 9s right through to under 15s. And you'll kind of see how we develop those core skill sets.
Okay. All right. Well, so what's the final thought you'd like to leave us with, Rev, on this?
Yeah, I think as we've spoken about, leaving the age grade at how it is in New Zealand, that's got my vote at the moment.
David, where do you come down after this?
I think we need to, there's probably a few, I'd say quite a few generalisations in this conversation. We need to be very clear about the definitions. And when something is being done well, we need to say, hey, let's celebrate this, let's get behind it, and then let's continue to make it safer. That's how we educate, that's how we encourage, that's how we take people on the journey.
So ban contact sports for under 14s or not?
I don't know. I don't know about rugby. Boxing, if Chris comes over and can present the information, then no, I don't think I'd have an issue with boxing, competitive boxing being banned for under 14-year-olds.
Chris, are you going to come to New Zealand? Sort out boxing?
I need to come back. Yeah, I need to come back. And I just want to say, I appreciate you guys take care so much about these kids, that you spend so much time helping teach them sports, and sports are wonderful. And I just feel if you have a chance to engage with the research, visit the brain bank at University of Auckland, see what the damage can be and hear the stories from the families, we would just do it a little differently. And the simplest way to start doing it differently is to stop hitting kids in the head so much, so young.
Thank you, Chris. David, Onaslai, thank you so much for coming in today, guys.
Wonderful. So great to have you all in here on The Elephant. We so appreciate your wisdom and your thoughts on what is quite a tricky subject. So thank you. Ngā mihi. What do you think, brother?
Oh, look, I would I have a daughter. I would not want her playing rugby. She's 12 years old. Or any contact sport. I think we don't let kids smoke marijuana at that age, and I like the analogy that we don't let them drive cars as well. I think protect their heads for as long as possible, and I actually think it's good to trust the science. Even though I love the game.
I know, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's our national, we're talking about a national sport, but we're talking about sports that kids love to do. My kid played rugby league. He also was a boxer. Do I look back on that now with different eyes? Yes, actually, a little bit. The science is quite compelling.
And I think all of them, all the people here genuinely care about doing the best for these kids.
Do, yeah.
And you know, it's just there's a divide between those who think sport is the best way to get them through life and all the lessons that it learns, and those that are very cautious, like Chris, who sees the impact on older athletes if they've taken too many knocks.
Yeah.
And I have too. I've seen that, and it's a terrifying thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, we've got to balance this with what is actually the best for our kids, both from the science point of view and the cultural one as well. Yeah, and so make up your own mind as a parent. That is the elephant for this week. Remember, you can catch us on the New Zealand Herald, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and your favourite social media platforms.
The elephant in the room. That's us. Time to talk.
Absolutely. Until next time, ngā mihi e te whānau, Mauri ora.